What are weird jobs nobody knows about but they pay well? Story 1. I once met a professional ice sculptor who made a eliminate at corporate events and weddings. It's a niche skill, but the pay is pretty impressive. Story 2. My sister-in-law is the nose for Yankee Candle. When a vat of scented wax is ready, she sniffs it. Story 3. I make teeth on a computer. I use a CAD/CAM program to design crowns and bridges for dental laboratories. I work remotely and do pretty well. Answer. My aunt does this all by hand, literally one of the best in the world. Can confirm she makes bank, and my dentists never know my front six are crowns until I tell them, or they see it on x-ray. Apparently it's getting harder to find doctors willing to spend the money on great work though. So many are outsourcing to China to get the Inspector Gadget chiclet teeth. Story 4. My dad was a master flavorist. He made artificial flavors for candy, beverages, and lots of other things. He made a lot of money during his career. Answer. I'm an analytical chemist for a flavor company who, among other things, reverse engineers competitive flavors to give the flavor chemists insight. LOL. Indeed, they make bank. Finding out how you can make a naturally derived, i.e. citrus flavor, taste the same every time. When you have to source your extracts and oils from different places in the world, at different times of the year, while the stock might be a different age due to supply issues, can be a lot more complex than one might think. Story 5. I had a boyfriend in Oklahoma who got state wages for going into backwoods and down dirt roads to find trash people dumped. His job was to report the trash for others to clean up, but most importantly, he had to sift through the trash to find anything that would identify who dumped the trash. I went with him a few times and I felt like a detective. It was quite fun. XB. Edit. For those that asked, I do not remember the name of the position, and Google was no help. I did find this, which seems similar. X200B. For some reason, the only name that comes to mind is manhole cover. Sorry, that was 23 years ago, and my memory is not that sharp. Story 6. When you work as a government employee or contractor with a top secret clearance, after you retire or get laid off, you can work as an adult worker within classified facilities called SCIFs. Escorts are needed when an uncleared person needs to work in the SCIF. For example, it might be a top secret data center that needs an air conditioner repair. All the adult worker has to do is watch the repairman and stay with them throughout the visit. They usually just drag a chair over and sit there while getting paid darn good money. Story 7. An old neighbor of mine was a picture hanging specialist contracted by many museums. He made $75K a year at the time, about $150K adjusted for inflation. Story 8. I don't even know the name for this, but a friend takes care of rich people cars for living. Pick up the car for maintenance, takes the car from A to B, etc. He doesn't actually work on the cars, just works for rich people that don't have time to take care of the car. Is super well paid, is on first-name basis with some of the richest people on the country. Apparently isn't easy to find trustworthy people to take care of your cars, plus access to your properties and so on. Answer. I almost had a gig like that. Years ago, I was working retail, and one of our regular customers was this guy and his boyfriend. He was a retired Army psychologist who lived in military housing, invested most of his money when he was in the military, retired with a good pension and a nice chunk of change from his investments. He had a collection of rare cars, including a Rolls-Royce originally owned by Dudley Moore and a bunch of frame-off restos. We were talking about his collection one day, and knowing I was really into cars, he said he needed someone to take care of his collection, maintain them, and do other random handyman-type jobs at the place he stored his cars. I was 21 at the time, and as tempting as it was, I knew I wasn't experienced enough. Last thing I wanted to do was fudge up one of his cars that I couldn't afford. It's one thing to do maintenance and repairs to my 10-year-old Celica. It's something completely different to try to maintain a mint 70s Rolls. Looking back now that I'm much more experienced with cars, it wouldn't have been that bad. Anything above my skill level, I could have brought it to the right people. Story 9. You know how they have repo men to repossess cars of borrowers not keeping up with payments? Well, they also have repo men for yachts and private jets. I talked to an older guy with a pilot's license who was getting a lot of calls to join an outfit that does this. But he said he wasn't crazy about finding out what kind of security a guy in possession of a $10 million plane would have and what they would do to keep it. Story 10. I'm a greens person in the film industry. I'm responsible for building and maintaining the plants and trees on a set. Story 11. Cardiovascular perfusionist. Can't have open heart surgery without us, but almost no one knows we exist. Answer. I always love when I tell people I'm a perfusionist and then wait for the response. Some fun responses I've gotten are, "Oh, so you make perfume? Neat. I have a friend who's a percussionist too." Ah, a transfusionist. So like you give blood to people. Close, but also so far LOL. It's a wonderful, intense, stressful, not always rewarding, but also sometimes immensely rewarding job. Story 12. I play trumpet for a touring Broadway show. Not that weird, but it's amazing how few people know there are real musicians playing live below the stage. Story 13. My aunt and her daughter both do seasonal work as hand pollinators, harvesters, certain types of plants, saffron, vanilla orchids, have very small windows of time when you can pollinate or harvest from them, a couple of hours to a half day. So the growers need people who can work fast and delicately to hand pollinate or harvest whatever plant they are growing. Plus, if the plant is small and they grow in the ground, it's a lot of bending to get down and do whatever has to be done, especially if they have a whole field of tiny flowers and you are using tweezers or a tiny paintbrush. My auntie and cousin have been doing it for years now. They always get called back and make a lot of money for 1-2 days' work. Answer. I work in this field as well, but as the grower. We have about 20 acres under glass production, but a couple of those are set aside for breeding. All the breeding greenhouses are hand-pollinated, since crosses, selfs, etc. are so important you can't rely on the bees. Most of the folks on the pollination team have been doing it for 20 years and are truly incredible. It takes a lot of patience and detail to hand-pollinate thousands of flowers every day. Story 14. I was once a pine cone harvester. A helicopter would cut off the tops of trees and bring them to us to pick off the pine cones, which would then go to tree planters to germinate and plant. 35 to fill a 5-gallon bucket. Experienced pickers would fill 2 an hour, but the sap getting all over your clothes, skin, and hair is very annoying and a big deterrent for most. Answer. I got to go to San Lucas Toliman in Guatemala, and there we were taken to this little guy who talked about forest restoration. They had so many mudslides from cutting trees. This man had a few helpers or school-age kids working with him, but there were thousands of small paper cups, each with a little sapling. I never thought about the stickiness of sap and how to get it off. I'm glad you worked collecting seeds. Story 15. I used to work for a landlord doing maintenance on his properties. I had free rent and made $3K a month. This was late 90s into the early 2000s. It was a good gig. I had a truck he gave me. I would go around mowing lawns, shoveling snow, light repairs. Any major repairs he sent to the contracting company he owned, I'd call them, and a guy would be over a few hours problem out of my hands. Story 16. Pet food companies have a staff of human people to taste test the food. For obvious reasons, this pays pretty well, I hear. Answer. This isn't a thing. There are palatability tests that are done with dogs and cats to see their preference between items and how much is consumed. And even this isn't done for every item, considering how much it costs to do. Humans are not paid to taste the food. However, there are product cuttings where aspects of the food are tested. Things tested range from aroma, kibble diameter, visual defects, excess amount of bone feathers visible in the kibble. There are the really passionate people that will taste the wet food or the treats, but it's not required. These people usually do it for the reactions and attention they get. Source. Worked for an industry leader in the U.S. for 10 years and launched hundreds of pet food products. Story 17. Not that weird, but lesser known. I'm a focus group moderator, which means I sit in a conference room with a group about 8 people and lead a discussion about whatever product or brand I'm working for. The groups are usually 90 minutes or 2 hours tops, and for in-person, I get paid $2K group. Virtual groups are a little less, but still excellent rates. Story 18. I once had a gig trying to sneak weapons past airport security. It wasn't a long-term thing, but student me thought the pay was pretty good. Story 19. I'm often told that people have no idea my job exists, and I make pretty good money, $145K this year. I trade energy between different power companies on the West Coast, send instructions to power plants, and then schedule the energy to flow along transmission lines. The schedule is part of the reason for the high salary. I work 12-hour shifts, and in a 5-week period, I work 7-day shifts, 7 overnight shifts, and have 21 days off. I do this from home more than half of the time, so that's a sweet perk too. Edit. Should have disclosed that I live in a H-call area, which does inflate my compensation a little bit. Edit 2. Since there may be some curiosity, Power does not trade like stocks in a stock exchange. For the most part, stock shares do not evenly equate to energy for many reasons. I also do not benefit from the profitability of trades I make, but the utilities Power customers do. The main reason here is because what if I just didn't secure enough power and people are blacked out because I deemed it non-profitable? My PL is tracked solely for performance appraisals and promotions. My compensation is 85 annual salary and 15 annual cash bonus as long as we do not lose money for our customers. Story 20. In New York City, and probably only in New York City, you can be a professional wait-in-line person. You wait in line for a theater ticket or a seat at a famous restaurant. Lines that take hours. A tourist who doesn't want to wait and has a full itinerary will happily pay you to stand in for them so that they can see the show or eat at the famous restaurant later that day. Story 21. Ship pilot, especially ice pilots. You need a decent amount of experience, but it's not unheard of for people's day rates to be in the multiple thousands. And if anything goes wrong, technically and legally, it's the captain's fault. Answer. Regarding ship pilots, these are very lucrative jobs that usually needs an unlimited tonnage master license, some pilotage credentials, and decent connections to even enter the program. Then 3 to 5 years of apprenticeship to become a full pilot. Not to mention one of the most dangerous jobs on the water. I feel that they get compensated pretty fairly for the expertise and track required to get there. $400K a year. Story 22. I worked as an organ deliverer. Forgot the official title for around a year. Job was simple. I was stationed in the biggest hospital in my state. If an organ donation was received that needed to go to another hospital for a transplant, it was my job to move it. I was paid $40 an hour to most nights sit on my jerk in the break room and watch TV or play on my phone. I probably only have to deliver something once a week at most. It was an okay job except that it was boring as shoot, since the hospital I was stationed at did 95 of all the organ transplants in my state, and the other major hospital that did them was around 3 hours away, and you wouldn't ever have to go up to north to it. Lots of pay to sit around, but well, I wasn't exactly feeling fulfilled career-wise. Story 23. You ever heard of an urban bat tracker? That's me. I'm the guy who steps into the night when the city sleeps, tracking the unseen ballet of bats against the backdrop of empty offices and starlit skies. My job is a blend of science and solitude. Armed with detectors that translate bat echolocation into something audible, I map their flight, study their behavior, and contribute to research that's vital for urban ecosystem conservation. It's not just a job, it's a commitment to understanding these misunderstood creatures of the night. The experience is surreal. As the world winds down, my work begins. I walk through parks and alleyways, under bridges and alongside rivers. The city's nocturnal pulse becomes my soundtrack. A car horn here, a distant laughter there, all underlined by the constant rhythmic clicking of my bat detector. Each night is a lesson in patience and awe. Bats, these tiny, agile creatures, dart and dive in the darkness, almost like shadows flitting at the edge of my vision. There's a poetry in their flight, a kind of silent music that fills the night air. The pay is decent, surprisingly. It's a niche field, and expertise in urban wildlife ecology can be hard to come by. But it's not the money that keeps me here. It's the moments of connection, the feeling of being a part of something bigger and wilder, right in the heart of the city. Sometimes the most extraordinary things are hidden in plain sight, waiting to be discovered in the quiet symphony of the night. Answer. I have an in-law who does urban wildlife ecology. She was recently tracking salamanders in an area PGE was going into. Before that, a hole that had been dug was co-opted by a family of bears. It was pretty deep, so they had to figure out how to get Mama Bear and her 2 cubs out. Interesting that she was just telling us stories at Thanksgiving, so I asked her profession. Now here you are. Very cool. Story 24. A lot of people might already know this. Everyone focuses on how much movie stars make, but the blue-collar crew members make a pretty penny as well. Not millions for one project, obviously, but 6 figures a year type of good. Think boom op, a greens person, plants, or some dude running cable to power the sets. These people make good money. Story 25. I know a guy that makes mocked-up photos of what women will look like after they have a plastic surgery procedure. Story 26. Cytotechnologist here. One-sentence summation of my career is that I screen pap smears for a living. The specimens come from the OB/GYN to the laboratory, where they get processed on slides, stained and cover-slipped, then brought to our department for microscopic review. Main thing we are looking for are cellular abnormalities, known as dysplasia. We mark the cells in question, then forward to the pathologist for final interpretation. If no abnormalities are found, the cytotech can release those cases without MD review. We do find actual cancer from time to time, but the primary purpose of our job and the pap test is to find dysplasia before it turns malignant. The pay is very good these days, anywhere from $35 to $70 an hour, depending on your experience level and location. Education level is a Bachelor of Science degree, then completing an accredited cytotechnology program, which is normally another year. The technology has upgraded from simply using a microscope to many laboratories use semi-automated screening, where the computer will show you what it thinks are the most significant fields of view for you to examine. And we are looking at completely digital screening in the near future, where these fields of view are displayed on a monitor. That said, the human is still the final arbiter of what is negative and abnormal, for now at least. Story 27. Roadies, aka the people that tour with concerts and set them up for a living. We can easily make $100K a year. Story 28. I have a buddy who gets to remove or eliminate things on a runway. Alligators, bees, deer, birds. If it's on the active runway, no matter what it is, it gets shot and removed. Very rarely do they have to do this. I think my buddy's been doing it 5 years now and hasn't had to shoot anything. But he has had to remove alligators from nearby ponds and spray for hornets and such. Around 30 an hour. Story 29. Corrugated fiberboard structural engineer designer, which is a long-winded way to say that I design cardboard boxes for a living. I make pretty decent money too. I spend my day in a design lab. Think large, mostly empty room with a lot of corrugated cardboard sheets and a few large CNC flatbed cutting machines. I use a program called Artios CAD to draw a flattened box shape, essentially how it looks before being glued, folded up, assembled. And then that drawing is converted into a physical cutting die to be used on machinery in the factory portion of where I work. It's incredibly fun work and really makes you think about the packaging industry as a whole. We try to avoid non-paper materials at all costs, so our products, the boxes, tend to be very environmentally friendly. We also source all of our paper from ecologically friendly corrugators who own land and grow trees instead of buying them from deforesters. A lot of my job is making really simple boxes for everyday items. Your typical cardboard box style, 4 flaps on top and bottom, but I get to do more interesting stuff pretty often, like displays. Think the cardboard displays you see in grocery store aisles, and also unique packaging that has to protect the product inside. Story 30. I drive around and look at parking lot lights at night, making sure there are no outages. I don't fix it, I report it in an app, and the guys with the bucket truck show up later. It's part of the overall service my company provides. It's a monthly fee, and I pretty much have a set list of properties I visit either once a month or once a quarter. The pay isn't exceptional, but I basically get paid to listen to podcasts, so no complaints here. They also pay mileage, properly so no tax. Maybe not exactly an answer to the question, but yeah, there's someone that does that. Story 31. I had a window screen repair business for a few years, worked by myself out of my basement, and when it was nice out of my truck at people's homes. I probably only made 50 to 60K annually, but I only worked a few days a week, a couple hours a day. Work-life balance was pretty nice. Story 32. I met an infusion nurse who told me about her job. She worked 3 12-hour shifts per week at a smaller clinic in a metro area. She'd hook patients up to an IV and give them their chemotherapy or MS substances or whatever else was prescribed. Hook them up and monitor for problems, which was one of the time, and those she sent to the ER. She made 100 an hour. It took a bunch of specialized training, a couple of years IIRC, to be familiar with the substances, but said it was no more than most specialized nurses. And since her field was understaffed, she could do it probably forever if she wanted. Story 33. My friend is working with a guy who does the flooring felt for mini golf courses. Apparently, there are only a few people in the U.S. who do it, and they make eliminate, including expenses paid to fly out, etc. Story 34. I once knew a guy that bred crickets. He sold them to pet stores. He also collected and sold the cricket poop as fertilizer. Answer. Honestly, if he's still doing it, he's probably making bank. Pet ownership skyrocketed with the pandemic, and there were often live cricket shortages. Stores couldn't get enough. Also, cricket continues to be a unique protein that brands are expanding into. Think the brand Jiminy Cricket. The challenge is finding a supplier who has enough that can support a large commercialization of it. Story 35. I'm a pathologist assistant. Some people know that we do autopsies, but the majority of the job is dissection of surgical specimens. Basically, anything removed from the body, biopsies to whole organs or limbs, comes to us for sampling. Story 36. Frozen embryo travel concierge. They pick up the tanks and get them through airport security, then fly with them to the destination and drop them off. Story 37. IT auditor. I work with financial auditors to ensure that businesses are doing what they say they are in terms of data protection, access control, cybersecurity, software development, etc. It is a lot of, what are your policies, procedures? Do you follow them? Do they map to NIST's other frameworks and best practices? There is a lot of asking questions and ensuring people are doing what they should be doing. Occasionally, you discover fraud or incompetence and get a VP fired. It requires decent IT skills, lots of continuing education, strong soft skills, and a solid bullshit detector. I work mostly remote. I get European levels of vacation with American IT pay and no mandatory overtime. I get paid to do training, attend conferences, and get certs and CPEs built into my regular hours. Story 38. I'm a casino attendant. I wouldn't say base pay is outstanding, but when you add the tips in, then it's pretty good money, and they are pretty consistent. Story 39. It's not a weird job, but an underrated one. Dog walking pays very well, especially since lockdown. People are getting dogs instead of having kids, so it's very in-demand job and pays well. Very well, as people want their fur babies treated like royalty. Story 40. My SO builds trails. It's a job I never considered until we met. I am much more aware of my trail etiquette, knowing people have put a lot of time and effort into making a trail for me to walk on. Bad news is, he only occasionally will come hiking. Since he spends so much time already on trail, it's like going to work for him. Although when he does come, with it is fun to get his perspective on the state of a trail and hear his thoughts on how it can be improved. Story 41. I sell compost worms on the side. You would be surprised how many people want to buy worms. I usually cannot meet demand. Story 42. Sober companions. They make upwards of $1,000 a day by living with and spending all day with those who are at risk of a relapse. Story 43. Bovine artificial insemination technicians. In an area with a large number of farms, a tech can make 100,000 plus company vehicle and benefits. In addition, these jobs are in rural areas, so cost of living is generally lower. Answer. For valuable horses, it takes also $6,000 per attempt. Half granted the mare gets pregnant or not, the other half if it's successful. Now every attempt takes a few milliliters of a shot, which can be nearly less than a liter load. Do your maths. Cons. Collecting can be quite dangerous. The horse is tricked with a mare, but then a tool with a collector bottle in the end is used. But if you're not extra careful, you might end up paralyzed, seriously injured, or dead. Story 44. VFX editor for scripted television. I'm in charge of keeping track of all the VFX on a show, creating temp versions, turning files over to vendors to do the finals, and a bunch of other stuff. No degree required, and I make about $250,000 a year. Story 45. I sell software, $90,000 base commission. WFH realistically work about 10 HRSWK at most. Using the free time to get certified land and enterprise account executive role, making $150,000 base commission, working 30 HRSWK. I have a bachelor's master's in an art-related field, freelanced for 15 years before getting into this. Story 46. I fly all over the world doing software presentations. I'm not a sales rep. My only job is to prepare a 45-minute tech demo, sometimes 10 minutes because sales reps are often fond of their own voice. And I make $200,000. Best job ever. Story 47. I met a professional mermaid while in Cancun. She wears a mermaid tail and swims in the pool during private parties and corporate events. She says that some people are hired by Disney. Story 48. I work for the USPS making $75,000 a year as a bike mechanic, 40 hours a week. As a bonus, they do a 5 retirement match per check, and I will also get a nice separate pension when I retire. Story 49. I know someone who carves dates of passing into headstones. He gets 100 per headstone and can sometimes do 8 per day. Story 50. Banquet serving. Rich people parties, wedding, etc. Same with banquet bartending too. If your hotel company pays the servers a percentage of the gratuity, hourly can jump up to 50 HR, with cash tips on the bar. Unionized property, 60 to 70 during the busy season. Business is a bit slow in the winter, but with proper money management, it's lovely time off. I used to travel internationally during the slow season. Story 51. I once went to an old guy's house up in the mountains. Old in that he died, and his daughter was trying to sell off his assets. He was in process of building a 4,000 square foot underground house. The house was pretty much there without any outer walls. All the support pillars were there with the roof and had been covered with earth. There were channels in the floor for electricity but hadn't been wired yet. There were about 5 C-trains or semi-trailers full of super high-end machinery. Herrig surface grinders, SIP jig borers, lathes, mills. You could see that the deepest part of the house was going to be the machining area. The daughter said he made his money making stamps for stamping Best Buy dates on the bottom of beer cans on a pantograph. That's a pretty niche skill. Story 52. I do fire alarm, fire sprinkler inspections. I get paid pretty well to trip sprinkler systems and set off fire alarms. Story 53. Material handling, sales consultant engineering. Sell companies what they need to use their warehouse most effectively, and you make lots of. Story 54. Medical physicist. Every hospital that utilizes X-rays, CT scanners, MRI, etc., has one of us behind the curtains, testing and monitoring the machines. We don't work with patients directly, so not many people outside of the hospital employees realize how vital we are to these systems. Story 55. Medical device sales. If you have a degree and don't mind some weird hours, you can make a lemonade. Every hip or knee replacement in the U.S. has 1 or more sales reps in the room. Same for almost every trauma, spine, sports, ENT procedure. Story 56. Farrier, aka trimming hooves and nailing shoes onto animal feet. The trick is only a handful of states have a school that offers a good farrier program, and not many farriers have the time for an apprentice, so relocating for a school is the best opportunity. If you have the guts and skill to trim dress hooves, you'll make a lemonade and can live and work just about anywhere in the world. Story 57. My uncle drove rich people's cars between their various houses. Not a bad job for those who like to drive. Story 58. Elevator maintenance. Life insurance actuary. Your days are filled with determining risk of passing based upon age, gender, smoking, zip code, etc. Story 59. I work as a dental lab technician. Most people don't realize that when your dentist takes impressions for something, crown, dentures, retainer, night guard, they get sent out to us at the lab. I personally specialize in dentures. It pays pretty well, potentially more if you're business-minded and open your own lab. Story 60. Kids entertainer. We hired a guy that says he does 900 shows a year at $400, $500 a show. Dude makes $400K a year. Story 61. Touring music industry tech. I pull about $150K, varies with how much work I get and how well I negotiate my rate. There are quite a few of us, though not enough if you're interested. I have an eye-watering selection of specialized skills. I mostly work in lighting and automation. I used to be an electronic engineer. Downside, you're away from home long periods, and the hours can be awful. Story 62. I met a guy once that repaired shopping carts. Weird job, but someone has to do it. He worked under contract to some big chain grocery stores. This has been many years ago, so IDK if the job still exists. Story 63. I designed railroad crossings, the gates, signals, bungalow, etc. No degree needed, just the on-job experience. Paid great. People were usually surprised when I told them what I did. Story 64. Data center technician. $70K a year. And works the same as an office IT tech, except you don't have to deal with annoying customers, and you can wear what you want. Tickets mostly come from automated computer systems telling you exactly what's wrong. Plus, no printer rollers. Story 65. So you ever see job postings for oil field services? Yeah, it's not just welders and pipe fitters. The guy we asked to jump in a truck and drive a box of gauges out to West Texas makes $40 an hour plus overtime. Once you spend 2 to 3 years in the oil industry, you realize everyone makes over $100K a year. Story 66. Anesthesiologist assistant, like a PA but for anesthesia. About $200K starting pay right out of school, and I've seen sign-on bonuses up to $75K. Story 67. I'm a nuclear pharmacy technician. Didn't know this job even existed till a previous pharmacist I worked with referred me. Definitely very niche, but the best paying pharmacy gig I've had to date. Story 68. I create synthetic data to train artificial intelligence versus using real data like images. For instance, instead of training an AI to recognize facial expressions by feeding it millions of images of real people's faces with a description, I create 3D renders of human faces with infinite variations, programmatically. It's very similar to working as a video game designer, but at much larger scales. Pays extremely well. Currently working at Meta. Story 69. I'm a perfusionist, kind of a niche medical position. Requires grad school. Wide range of places to work from high to lower acuity. I absolutely love my career. I consider myself very lucky. Story 70. People know about it, but I'm a nurse in a prison and make over $120K a year on night shift and minimal OT. Yes, it can be dangerous, but there is a lot of job security. Story 71. Beer delivery driver. Bust your jerk every day and you can get done around 1 p.m. usually. It's a physical job, but I get paid $70,000 a year to work out essentially. Story 72. Since I haven't seen it mentioned, and I'm sure some people don't know, but technical sales engineer, and we can make over $250K a year. You don't normally walk into the role off the street, but you can work your way up to it over a few years. Degree optional with the right experience. Story 73. I met a guy who recycles dead people's hip, knee, and other joint replacements. Apparently, it's very lucrative. Story 74. I used to build ski lifts, which was pretty niche in and of itself. But the real gem was the person who, once all the towers were up and the main rope was ran, came down to splice the rope into a continuous line. Our guy was one of just 6 old-timers in the country who did tow rope splicing for ski lifts, tramways, etc., and got paid very, very well. But he basically lived 10 months out of the year traveling the country in his pickup truck, so his home life wasn't of very high quality. And the arthritis and scarring on his hands from decades of manipulating steel rope is probably the reason why not many people are willing to take over the reins. Story 75. Surgical technology. I have a GED from 40 years ago and a certificate in ST. I make over $100K a year and work 3 days a week, 3 through 12s. Story 76. Falconry. Saw a dude holding a falcon standing in a large corporate campus. I asked him what he was doing. He said he is hired by major corporate campuses to keep pigeons away for $30K a year. One falcon can keep a 100K square foot facility free of pigeon shoot, and it's worth every penny when they have all these courtyard gathering spaces with expensive landscaping. He patrols 3 diff campuses a week. Story 77. It's not that strange of a job, but most people don't realize how much dealership service and parts can make. It's a wide range, but depending on where you live and what line you work for, a counter person can make $100K for basically looking up, ordering, and pulling auto parts. Service advisors are the same. Again, location and make dependent, but I know some who make well over 6 figures. Story 78. I have a friend that does land management for those places that offer hunts for rich people. Hell dress the property, for lack of a better term, to make the ideal conditions for quail or hogs or deer or whatever. He flies around in his little dinky plane checking on tree cover and looking for bedding areas and whatnot. A big part of his job is blowing up beaver dams and eliminate wild hogs. He has a side business sighting in rifles. His said once that he thought God created HOTS for the sole purpose of sighting in rifles. Interesting dude. Story 79. Collecting dead birds under a wind turbine. It's 35 HR and you just drive long distances in a 4-wheeler. Story 80. People who make costumes for furries. Amateur, they charge $2,000 to $5,000 for a costume, and professional can go up to $10K. It's a tough business cause of competition and expensive supplies, but surprisingly an in-demand skill. Story 81. Tissue donation. Need to have some medical knowledge, but for the most part, they train you on the job. Story 82. Cart provider or courthouse reporter. certified captioner. Starts off at about 50 hours but can easily make about 200,000 a year. Story 83. Our water just stopped working one day, and we had to hire a leak detection specialist. He charged $600 for the first hour and $150 for each hour after that, with a minimum of 2 hours, so he's doing all right. Fixed our water in like 3 hours, though. After it had been broken for 3 days, and multiple other professions had said, never seen that before. Story 84. I'm a horse photographer who also helps promote stallions and horse ranches via social media and print media. $100K a year. Story 85. PCB cloner here. All machines gadgets have complicated circuits. It is first part that fries. Replacements are rarely available as models change. Companies shut down. Instruments get old. Only few people know work I do, but it is very demanding job. Not easy to understand logic and design and copy new PCB. My other job is earworm remover. Both jobs pay well, but first one pays really well. Only problem is I cannot copy secret GOVT PCB. That is no-no. My expertise is restricted to household gadgets, old scientific instruments, old control systems in industries. Story 86. I work with lots of businesses in the line of work I am in. One of my favorites is a company that specializes in rehabbing windows in historic homes. They take them out, clean them, upfit them to be more energy efficient, and then reinstall. They make absolutely insane money. Story 87. Digital forensics. You handle evidence that involves computers, hard drives, cell phones, etc. for court cases, and sometimes get to hack into phones or dig through hard drives looking for stuff that's hidden. I took a class on it. It seemed really interesting, and then talked to someone who did it for their career, who told me, in no uncertain terms, to find a different field to work in. Apparently, you see a lot of really awful stuff on a daily basis and have to testify in court pretty often, but you make decent money with really good benefits. Answer: I did not do this, but a different, dirty job that had me rubbing shoulders with the workers of other messed up fields. Got called in to do my thing for the local child abuse investigation team. At the door, I was told in no uncertain terms to keep my focus on the ground, follow the heels of the person in front of me, and not look up until they gave me the all clear, lest I become scarred for life. Their whole office sounded off for the all clear just to be sure I wasn't subjected to anything on the computers they were cracking. I dislike that we need people to do those jobs, but have mad respect for those with the stomach to get it done. Cracking into the devices of the lowest scum of our species, looking for evidence, must change you. Story 88. I am a caretaker in a resort area that I live. I have 8 clients and make about $3,000 per client per month. I check on their home, inspect landscaping, start and drive their cars for a bit each month. I fix any minor issues, light bulbs, leaky faucets, and contract out larger repairs. The day before they arrive, usually a few days or weeks, I Instacart food orders, make sure everything is ready to go for them. It's a lot of fun. I drive Ferraris, Maybachs, and all types of cool cars. Story 89. Buying beer. I was in acquisitions for a decade. I went to breweries and decided if we would carry them. Europe at least yearly. Loved it. Story 90. I'm a greenhouse grower, aka bonafide plant nerd. Worked in the garden section of HD for years, then decided to finally get my degree. Still growing plants, but on a much larger scale. Been out of school for 5 years, grow my own crops, got a company truck and the money is great. But the crop never ends. Traditional field growers get an off-season, but greenhouses go 365 days. There's a huge demand and small talent pool, so growers are in very high demand. Story 91. Prompt engineers. There are some people who know how to properly ask ChatGPT questions to get the desired outcome, meaning how to phrase their sentences with right words and ask the right questions. They are paid the same as programmers. Story 92. My husband has a friend from college who is a mechanical engineer for a toy company. He helps design the toys that go in Happy Meals or promotional tie-ins. Story 93. Roadkill cleaner. For some reason, deer like to try and cross a 10-lane interstate by the airport. It's a state job, so the salaries are public. $120 to $150K. Story 94. Lollipop person, holding those slow stop signs. My dad was offered $45H just for the job and $55H if he did it during summer. Story 95. Script. Coverage for the entertainment industry used to be like this. No idea if it still is. Reading screenplays and deciding whether a studio should consider it for production. You're expected to pass 95 of the time with a short synopsis. If you're a fast reader, you can make $1,000 or more a day, but the work can be feast or famine. Can also lead to entry-level production work if you have a good nose for hits. Story 96. I work in commercial refrigeration, and one of the more lucrative jobs at my company, ice cream machines. We sell service soft serve machines that are upwards of $35K, LOL. Pay tops out at about $60 an hour, and we have one guy for the whole state. Customers happily pay for full drive time to and from Seattle to Yakima, Washima. Much worse ways to make $60 an hour, haha. Story 97. Here's a couple I could think of off the top of my mind. Let me know what you think. 1. Professional cuddler. Some people are willing to pay for platonic companionship and physical touch. Professional cuddlers provide comfort through hugs and cuddling sessions. 2. Pet food taster. Quality control in the pet food industry involves human taste testers to ensure the product meets safety and taste standards. 3. Foley artist. These sound effects experts create everyday sounds for movies and TV shows. From footsteps to rustling leaves, their work enhances the audio experience. Story 98. I operate the transmission electric grid. Not a lot of people know that a bunch of nerds sitting in a control room all day are the last line of defense to a large-scale blackout or nuclear plants losing off-site power. I love my job, get paid pretty well, but when I describe what I do to other people, they usually have a lot of questions, LOL. Story 99. I know a woman in New Jersey who makes soup from Novmar and goes to all of the cold outdoor events and sets up shop, clears $60K, and then sells ice cream the rest of the year, making around $90K with that. Her daughter quit her job as a pharmacist to take over the business. Story 100. Expert witness. If you've been in an industry for a long time, you're probably an expert in what you do. Law firms very frequently hire expert witnesses to write reports with their opinions of legal cases and sometimes appear and testify in court. In some cases, it pays just as much as what the law firms charge. Answer. In my experience, expert witnesses make a lot more on an hourly basis than I do as an attorney. However, they don't get a lot of hours out of each specific case, so they may bill my clients $700 an hour, but they only work 4 hours on the case. And that'll be the only case I use them for, sometimes for years. As a result, they have to be very comfortable traveling a ton to make a living. Or, as the vast majority seem to do, make it a part-time gig. There's lots of college professors in STEM that have very lucrative side hustles in expert witness work. I am pretty jaded about the field, though you can find someone to say whatever you want for the right fee. It's pretty gross when you see behind that curtain. Story 101. People always see bin collectors as a bad thing. They get paid $18 to $20 an hour to tip some bins into a truck, and probably only twice a week. They say, if you don't do well in school, you'll be a bin collector. The bin collectors look perfectly happy with their jobs to me. Story 102. People know the field but not the details. I'm in cybersecurity sales, specifically banks but sometimes other companies. You know that FDIC protection? It comes with a stipulation. Annually, those banks have to be tested by a company like ours for security risks. So my job is to convince banks to let my team try to steal from them. And they have to do it so basically whoever calls them first gets the job. I get 10 of basic runs and 30 of our big jobs, where we are dressing as cleaners and making copies of ID cards to spoof, etc. Our bottom shelf service is $50K, and for a full team 2-week test, it's $500K. I'm a good salesman, so usually it's something in between. Best part of my job is debriefing the client as we go. Contract has upper management and executives in on us doing it, watching us do it, but they can't tell anyone at the bank. So they sit and sweat seeing my guys get closer and closer. That's if the first day doesn't immediately crack them open with an email. Hey, this is Bob in IT and we need your credentials. Those are fun. My favorite was showing a Fortune 500 entertainment company CFO footage of my 20-year-old intern, convincing his secretary to let him into the entire financial system, where he took $100 million. He called her as a work-from-home security consultant, put on an hour-long YT video of baby crying noises, and kept apologizing as he slowly turned the volume up every few minutes. The fact my team almost never has to actually hack anything says a lot about how easy it is to get people to give up sensitive info. Story 103. Packaging engineer. Everybody has to ship things all over the world. No one thinks about how all of that stuff is designed or made. You can net $100K fairly easily. Story 104. A chicken sexer. Not particularly high-end salary, but definitely a job I think most people have never heard of before. Story 105. Buddy of mine works as a quote-unquote server maintenance technician. Does it from home most of the time, but travels occasionally for on-site tasks. Most of his job is literally just remotely accessing servers and checking for things like available storage, pending updates, and in cases where important processes have stopped or a service is down, he's the one that goes in and gets things going again. Dude makes around $100K a year just to do cleanup and make sure things are updated properly. Story 106. Used to read newspapers, listen to the radio, and watch TV for 8 hours a day. Newspaper clipping and radio TV transcription service. Pay was okay. Had to get up at 3 to be at work by 5. My day ended at 1, so my afternoons were open, so I worked on my first novel. Story 107. I don't know if it's weird, but it's a job a surprisingly low amount of people know about. Contract specialist. I work for one of those federal agencies. I work Monday through Fridays, all federal holidays off, and my schedule never changes. Money is great, and because of the agency I work for, I can do overtime to my heart's content when I want to. When I started the job, I didn't realize most people don't know what I do. I can do the same thing on the civilian side once I get my retirement out of the way. Story 108. Well, I'm a content strategist, not that weird TBH, but nobody knows about it that doesn't work in communication or advertising. It pays well, don't worry for me. Story 109. Behind every architect is a specification writer. Nobody knows we exist, but our scarcity means we get paid pretty good. Story 110. Sometimes being a poll worker can be good money. We had a referendum last month, and I worked as an absentee voting officer. Worked 6:30 a.m., 8:30 p.m., attended a 1-hour training session, and came in for 2 hours the night before to help our booth supervisor set up, as their 2IC was sick or something. All up, I got paid about $7.40. On the day itself, our booth was super quiet, so I spent half the day sitting at a desk waiting for something to happen. The next day, I helped at a depot counting ballots for 9 hours and got paid 46 hours. Then again, working during the week is not good money, as it only pays 29 hours. Story 111. Going to lunch with someone and getting paid $500. Not an adult worker, just a companion. Not a sugar baby either. Story 112. Medical unit secretary. Most of the jobs being posted require a lot of education or years of experience training. Do I make $100K a year? Hell no. Is it a great starter job? Yes. Pays much better than a fast food job with none of the stress or standing on your feet. I've worked in my hospital system for 13 years under various titles. Had I known that unit secretaries were a thing, I would have started here. I work nights, 3 nights a week, 12 hours a shift. They have day shift positions if you are not a natural night owl. I work on the NICU now. We're a lockdown unit, so I basically verify IDs of visitors and make sure they are allowed to visit. Other duties include answering phones, typing up assignment sheets, ordering supplies, admitting and discharging newborns from the unit. Most shifts I do about 3 to 5 hours of actual work and a whole lot of nothing. This is a great job for college students, moms and dads, and semi-retired folks. We get to make our own schedules and pick up extra shifts if needed. I used to drag my carcass to an exhausting and depressing job 5 days a week. Now with shift diffs, I make more in 3 days than I did working 5 days a week. I love it because it gives me a lot of free time for my hobbies. There's no standard education for this job, but customer service experience, knowledge of medical technology, and proper telephone etiquette are a good start. Sometimes I get floated to other units. Right now I am sitting on the 6th floor unit because they needed one more person for their ratios. I am getting paid to literally do fudge all for 12 hours. I'm not driving a Tesla or anything, but my bills are paid and I live comfortably. Perfect job for lazy folks like me. Story 113. Ex-neighbor was the guy who tattooed super realistic nipples after breast surgery. He was paid extremely well. Story 114. During COVID, my career was put on hold, so I started working for a restoration company that also did a ton of homicide tragic end cleanups. They paid around $35 an hour, your food if you could eat, and your gas. After about 7 or 8 months, I quit. The amount of young kids who take their life was very depressing, unnerving, and it started taking a toll on my health. My drinking skyrocketed at home. Story 115. Being a manager for a travel company. I can be at home or anywhere really. I just have to have my work phone and work laptop with me all the time. I handle finding job sites for the travel employees and handle logistics, such as booking their flights, rental cars, etc. Might sounds easy, but trust me, it's overwhelming sometimes. Phone calls left to right. Sometimes employees are struggling with delayed flights. Or those calls I get at 3 a.m. to help out a new hire employee who traveled overnight and got a flat tire on the interstate, so I can give them advice on what to do. Story 116. Underwater welders make a fuck ton of money. You have to become dive certified and know how to weld. Then you do that, fixing boats that are too big to be lifted out of the water and repairing bridges that are underwater and shoot. Guy who changed a blown-out trailer tire was telling me about this. Texas has the best training program, he found out. Story 117. If anyone has a suggestion for a career in the medical field, laboratory, etc., that makes at least $100K a year starting, with preferably a bachelor's but master's is fine too, please let me know. I'm in school now for radiation therapy, but I don't think it's going to pay enough even though I enjoy it. I really enjoy helping others. Radiation therapy is very rewarding. I love being there for my patients. The money is just not what I am looking for. Also, I really don't want to be a nurse. Props to all the nurses out there though. I don't know how you all do it. Answer. I am a pathologist assistant in Southern California and make around $150K, though it would be a bit less in states with a lower cost of living. I dissect organs and submit tissue that the pathologist will look at under the microscope. You need a master's in a specific pathologist assistant program. There are 7 to 8 in the U.S. and a couple in Canada. A CLS, clinical lab scientist, is a viable career as well and needs a bachelor's degree. I don't think they quite make $100K, but managers can make above that. Story 118. Changing the light bulbs on super tall radio towers can pay extremely well. If you want the job, you can make up to $20K per climb. Story 119. Construction inspector. Fairly easy work with 3-4 years of experience. You can make $70K with some overtime. Story 120. Polish concrete for a few years. Pays very well, but the life away from home sucks, and it can be physically demanding. Story 121. Court reporting. Depends a lot on your location, but LA County is paying something like $120K a year with sign-up bonuses and benefits. Doesn't include the money you make off of transcripts either. Story 122. As a sideline, I have a friend who is paid to do cyber intimacy. She basically has an avatar she parks on a bed, and the client plays with the animations while she interacts with him by writing explicit stuff in real time. All while doing other things like watching Netflix, for example. All she needs is writing skills and a bit of imagination. There is no physical interaction such as cam or voice. She easily makes $30K per year for about 10 hours of work per week. Mind-blowing. Story 123. I have 2 weird ones. In the day, I'm a government banker. I meet with government officials and help them with lending, liquidity, and payments technology. This involves lots of conferences, which are basically giant parties, leading complex fintech implementations, and driving through beautiful country to perform in-person meetings with out-of-the-way counties and cities. Pay starts at $100K, and by late career, you can easily clear $300K. By night, I am a mix engineer, receiving audio files from clients over the internet and making their home recordings sound like professionally made songs. This one is less of a consistent job and more of a gig economy thing. But once you have a good reputation, you can easily make a few hundred for a few hours' work. Story 124. A friend of mine used to work as a flight courier. He delivered important documents or parts that were needed for manufacturing all over the world. That was paid very well, plus he was able to see the world and could stay at any place he went to for a couple of days. Story 125. I'm an evangelist for a cybersecurity company. My job is to talk, think, and write. I make $350K plus stock options. Story 126. Honestly, I collect trolleys for a supermarket, and I make $45 an hour. The work is so easy, too. I can fill the entire bay every 30 meters or so, and then go and sit down outside, where no one can see me for 15 meters just doing nothing. Story 127. Recently found out CN train drivers in Canada make a little over $100K per year, and they will train you for free if you're willing to relocate to Manitoba or Winnipeg. Can't remember. For a few months, paid training. Were it not for the kids, I'd be on that track, I think. Story 128. A petrochemical inspector. These guys literally come out to my equipment. I'm a process technician, and they bring this tiny hammer, tap on the nuts to make sure they're tight, and they're paid between $65 and $80 an hour. A lot of times they're paid substantially more than that. They make eliminate Story 129. Packaging engineer. Usually requires a degree from one of 4 schools in U.S. Starting out of school at about $70K and can get 6 figures in about 7. Designs protective packaging like boxes. Sometimes you can have a different creative degree if you're willing to start as a prototype maker. Story 130. I know a guy who has his own Czech OSHA consultancy. He gets paid to go to places and tell them if they would pass or fail a healthy and safety audit and how to fix it. I'm oversimplifying, but it seems like good hours and great pay. I know he was on a 14-night cruise with his wife. He did a couple of days' work on his laptop while on the cruise, and the money he generated from that paid for said cruise. Story 131. In 2008, I got a job as technician that serviced frac pumps. We would travel to oil fields and service the frac equipment and trucks on the weekends when they were shut down. We would get paid commission based on the number of units we serviced. A pump would be between 4K, 6K each, depending on model, and crews of 3 would split 20. Other equipment was less based on size. I got paid $500 per week and a commission check that was $2,400 on the low end and between 4K, 5K on the high end. The best part was the schedule. I got to the shop to check out the service truck and trailer about 8 a.m. Friday. We'd head out to the site, about 1.5 hours away, and unload the filters we used the prior week in a storage facility. Then we'd go get whatever equipment we needed to service until about 6 p.m., then head back to our hotel. Wake up at 6 a.m. Saturday and head out, work all day until dark. Wake up again Sunday and work until the scheduled equipment was serviced, anywhere from noon to 4 p.m. Head back to base and clean out the truck, then off for the rest of the week until Friday. My first year on the job, I made $87K, $126K in today's dollars. It was a dirty job, but I loved it. Story 132. A bereavement coordinator is someone who helps families with terminally ill or recently deceased loved ones. They manage everything from paperwork to appointments, handling the funeral service, and supervising volunteers and staff so that the family going through a difficult time doesn't have to. A bereavement coordinator position is a type of counseling service as well, and you might be responsible for arranging counseling for the bereaved when necessary. With a job like this, you would generally work in hospitals, nursing homes, or in hospice settings. Story 133. Mainframe programmer. The programming language is as it always was and hasn't changed much from the 1970s. You program in a text-based editor with IDK 32 characters per line. And if you need to insert a line into your text, you do II in front of the text. If you want to delete a line, it is DD. No click and.